Everybody, my name's Tom Chesterton. I'm the Managing Director of Tonic. We're a brand consultancy in London. It's a beautiful sunny day today, and this is episode number 4 of TonicWith. What we're trying to do with these sessions is to meet and chat with really interesting people who play a big role in the talent community. Met some interesting people today, but I'm really excited to talk to Pete Clarke today from RBI. Pete and I have had an awful lot to do with each other over the years, but this year is a big year for the Rad Awards. It's their 25th anniversary, and looking forward to finding out a bit more about that and Pete's view on the way that the talent market is developing. But Pete, I guess most people will know you, but maybe you could just give us a bit of background into who you are, who's the person behind the professional.
Sure. My name's Pete Clarke. I'm the sales director at Rad Business Information. I work on a number of recruitment brands, namely New Scientist is my big focus at the moment. A big part of my job, which Tom introduced me, is I run the Rad Awards, the Recruitment Advertising Awards, which is now in its 25th year. And I've been working at Rad Business Information for the past 13 years.
Oh, wow. So I can see you're at home today, obviously.
I am.
Tell us a bit about you as a person.
Me as a person, I'm a father to one 8-year-old son. He is a very keen footballer. I happen to manage and coach the under-9s football team, of which he's the captain. He's a keen. Wow. You'll like this, Tom. He's a keen Arsenal fan. Yeah. I know you're a Tottenham fan. He actually had trials with Arsenal on their academy development last year. Unfortunately, didn't quite make it. So you're going to have to
carry on working for a while more then, Pete.
Yes, yeah. I'm a Bristol City fan by birth. I'm born and bred in Bristol. I came to London 15 years ago. And I'm an Arsenal fan as well.
Okay.
When I moved to London, I lived near Highbury. That was my first place of residence. So I am a secret Arsenal fan as well.
Okay.
I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 30 years. I know I don't look it. And I'm very sociable. I like to have a good laugh. I'm impatient. But I guess the thing that I really stand for is embracing change, and okay. I think our industry has been through a very tough period over the last 5 years, and I think as we're coming out of it, I think more organisations need to look at the way they do things and embrace change. That's a bit about me.
Is it that change that motivates you? Is that the thing that gets you going in the morning, or is what drives you along?
Obviously, on a personal basis, my son motivates me. I think being involved in his life as much as I can is great. I really enjoyed the managing and coaching of football. But my big motivation is change. But my whole career has been selling. Even before I moved into this industry 15 years ago, I worked for B&Q, and the passion I had working in retail was selling things to customers. And that's no change now. Selling's a big part of, what gets me out of bed. Not just selling as a whole. It's more about understanding what a customer needs and trying to deliver on their objectives. Yeah. And selling the right solution, be it in the recruitment space or in the form of RADs, maybe a sponsorship opportunity.
Okay, so it's interesting. I was with different levels of sales professionals yesterday doing some focus groups to try and build out a campaign around how do you attract people into a sales career. And one of the things that very clearly came out from this organisation is that there's a bit of a stigma about sales. And there are a couple of people who did just what you did, which is just to talk very passionately about how interesting actually a career in sales might be. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that stigma's there if you describe yourself as a sales professional? Or
yeah, it was funny. I was chatting to a sort of client or an old client last night, and she actually works in market research, and she was saying how for a different organisation and how most people in marketing and the research team that she works in don't like sales, and sales, I think, salespeople can you know, unjustifiably so, they can get a hard time from organisations. Obviously, I feel as though that without a sales department, then the money won't be coming into the business. So I obviously look at it as a very important part of an organisation. But yeah, it has got a bit of stigma to it. I think the key is to try and embrace and obviously work with stakeholders and people around the organisation to make sure that you don't have that negative understanding of what salespeople are and sales departments are.
Okay, and presumably RBI put in place the network that allows you to be supported by the business as well. It's not just you on your own, right?
Yeah, no. RBI has quite a big sales force. I mean, I only work in one part of it, which is the recruitment media, RBI recruitment media part. But yeah, our organisation has a huge sales teams on all our brands. We're obviously RBI's traditionally a publisher. Now it's very much involved in data services and subscription-based services. So our business is changing, and RBI has been changing quite a bit over the past sort of 5 to 10 years. It's no longer looked at as a publisher, and the part of the business I'm in, what was probably 70% of the business, is now probably just 15%. So you can see how sort of the recruitment part of the recruitment sales part of RBI is no longer as important as the other parts of the business. Yeah,
RBI is meant to be a really good business to work for as well. It must be. I know I've spent a bit of time down in Sutton, with judging Rad Awards and things in the past, and it's got a really nice vibe to the place.
Yeah, it's Read Business Information is part of the Read Elsevier group, which is a big FTSE 100 company, and obviously working for a big FTSE 100 company comes with many advantages. I mean, I've been there 13 years. If you look at a lot of the people in and around me that I started with, they're still in the business. You have the opportunity to move around. They're not just, we have this kind of internal phrase now as we're not a ladder, we're a lattice. Okay. So, yes, we'd like you to work up within the business and the department that you're in, especially if you're happy. However, they will encourage you to move out of the part of the business that you're in into other areas, if indeed that's something you want to pursue. So,
sounds good.
It's a great company.
So you gave us a little bit of an insight into your prior career.
Yes.
B&Q. So tell us a little bit more about that. How did you manage to go from Bristol and B&Q to Highbury and ultimately to Sutton and to the leafy parts of Surrey?
Yeah, well, I was at college. I was working at B&Q as a sort of a Saturday lad. Kind of really enjoyed it, and I got to the end of college, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go full time. It was during the time, it was before Sunday trading existed. So, as a young sort of lad, you'd work 6 days a week, you get your double time on Sundays, and it was quite a, it was a good income. Then Sunday trading became part of the working week. I think most people that work in retail would get frustrated about working the weekends. All my friends happened to be in London at the time. Some of them went to university in London and then just stayed there. I think at the time I came out of a sort of a long-term relationship, so I was ready for a change as well, personally, both personally and in my working life. I was introduced to a recruitment consultant in media sales, whatever that meant. One of my friends was doing media sales for Dennis Publishing, not in recruitment, I hasten to add. And I ended up working for Centaur Communications for a marketing magazine there called Marketing Week, and that was the introduction really into recruitment sales. It was bizarre. I remember, I was working at B&Q, sort of selling kitchens and bathrooms and conservatories for around £2,000-3,000. I then moved and I was selling a full page advert for £6,000. Yeah, and it blew my mind. And when people used to phone up and ask me the rate of a full page, full colour, I'd be nervous about telling them, because I'd be thinking, wow, you could buy a new conservatory and bathroom for this. But you soon, obviously, numbers just become then, and then the rest is history. So I've obviously stayed since the 15 years stayed in recruitment.
Okay, very similar to me. When I came out of university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Looked in the back of the Guardian, so print advertising, found a recruitment consultancy who placed me in one of the very first job boards in the UK, actually in the world. And so there you have. You've got an internet site using a recruitment consultancy to place an ad in print to get people from the West Country into London.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But times change. But I remember really clearly there was a point at which I actually figured out that this talent environment that we're all working in was actually pretty interesting, really. It wasn't just about the what you're doing, it's the how you're doing it. It's about what's the output of this. So if you compare, to your point, selling conservatories or selling kitchens and the importance of a career, they're kind of different levels of magnitude, right? So was there a point at which you decided that this was the place that you wanted to be?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I remember the first year, it was just a means to an end, really. I was working for a good magazine based in Soho, good publisher, good people. It was very sociable. And there was a guy that worked with the ad agencies. I was obviously, as a telesales person, just selling to direct recruitment organisations, HR people. And we'd have a team sort of working with the ad agencies, and it became clear that that was what I was interested in. I used to look at those guys and think, they were going out on lunches and going out on these evening do's, and I thought I want some of that. So I set that as my early goal, was to work with the ad agency world. And I used to obviously speak to them on the phone. They used to book advertising, but I never obviously had the opportunity to meet them. So I think when I was successful, moved into that face-to-face role, working with the ad agencies, and probably at the time they were responsible for about 80% of the business that came in. Yeah. So they were a very important customer base, as they still are to most media. I just remember being able to eat at nice restaurants and drink in nice bars, and I thought, this is quite far away from working at a B&Q in an industrial state in a sort of a working class area of Bristol. So I kind of then started meeting people and becoming friends with them, and I think that was key. If you can become friends with clients, I think that makes your job a whole lot easier and a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree. So if you look back over your career, I imagine it hasn't been plain sailing all the way through. Is there a point that you would go back and say, okay, if I could change anything, I would change this particular thing about what I've done?
That's a really tricky question, Tom. I don't really have any regrets as such. I don't look at what I've done over the last 15 years and actually think, oh, I really wish I did that differently, or I really wish I perhaps did that. I've probably got a few regrets over some, 15 years I've only worked for 2 organisations. So I think there has been opportunities for me that I perhaps sit down now and think, what if? I'm not going to mention any organisations, but there's a couple of organisations out there that I had chance to work for that have now kind of, I look at now and think, wow, they're really powerful in this space. So I guess it would just be the what if I had done this or if I have done that. But then again, I've been at RBI for 13 years and I've got no regrets about that either.
No.
So no, I don't think I have. Perhaps, if anything, perhaps I should have left retail earlier and moved to London in my early 20s rather than my mid to late 20s, and perhaps, I would have started enjoying this industry sooner. I joined in 1999, and even then there was talk of, in the good old days of, how things used to be, and obviously fast forward to 2014, I'd actually look back at 1999 and say, the good old days. There's always good old days. So no, not really. No.
You and I are becoming the old buffers now, though, Pete. You know that.
Yeah, I accept that.
Yeah,
I accept that. I hope you do.
Yeah, hanging on to the ragged edges of youth, I think, but failing miserably, probably. And I think that if I do look back though, and I think about what it was like in the 1990s, it was kind of the Wild West of recruiting. There's lots of things that were starting to come to the fore. So people starting to use the internet a little bit, starting to use mobile a bit more, starting to change the way that dynamic between the employer and the the person that they're trying to hire works. It stops being about big print ads and beautiful imagery, and starts being about conversation in some ways. And I guess that's impacted on the way that you've seen your career develop.
Yeah, absolutely. We all talk about how print, it was all print. We weren't selling, when I first came into the industry, we weren't selling online. And there was a big, people were scared of it. Ad agencies were scared of it, and media were certainly scared of it. Obviously, there was you could do something so much cheaper. From talking about these full-page adverts for £6,000-7,000 and you could get a job listing, on a website for a few hundred.
Yeah.
We obviously, RBI used to own Total Jobs, and Total Jobs were one of the first sort of generic job boards that were out there. Obviously there were things like Taps and whatnot, but Total Jobs at the time were, and probably now is still one of the leading job sites for as a horizontal. And we used to run an event called the RBI Summit, where we used to take senior agency heads away for a couple of days, business and networking opportunities. And they would always tell us that they appreciate that the industry was migrating from print to online, and the one promise that we always gave them is that we would keep the price high. One, because you believe in your products, and two, that our RBI's biggest USP was always that we would give you an audience outside of a job-seeking audience. So we have people that come to our sites to digest content and read news, and we publish jobs to them that way. And agencies and clients would always say that was so much more valuable in a way than perhaps an active job seeker who's out there looking for work. So it was challenging, and obviously the relationship between media and agencies changed somewhat, because for job listings, I don't think agencies were too concerned that clients would start perhaps booking that direct with media. Commissions then became, it became irrelevant. An agency earning a 10% commission fee off a few £100 job listing wasn't worth it. So the relationships with media and agencies changed as media started then building relationships up with direct recruiters, and certainly the recruitment consultancies played a big part in giving you job volume to make sure that your SEO and you were getting your active job seekers coming to your site. But of course, with the sort of then moving on, as then the internet became a platform not just for job listings but for branding and everything else, then obviously agencies could see a business there as well. So it's not a matter of just placing a job on a job site and hoping that get the right candidate. It's about how you working with your client to expose the brand and what they're all about to a potential job seeker. So the media obviously then had to work then with the agencies again to talk about these opportunities. So it kind of went round, kind of first full circle. And actually, the only difference between print and online is just people are looking online rather than reading the print. So we need to then utilize the job sites, the community sites, editorial sites to expose what a client's challenge and objectives are, and to understand what type of talent that they want to bring into their organization.
Yeah, okay. And I guess if you use that model of change over the last number of years, if you think about how that's impacted on the work that's being done by clients direct, but also by agencies and also by media as well, that's got to change and shape the way that excellence is received. So if you think about the Rad Awards and what that is looking like now in terms of the categories, that's radically different to how it would have been 10 years ago.
Yes. Well, we're going to be celebrating 25 years of the Rad Awards, and if you look at the winning work that won it in 1990, when it was known then as the British Recruitment Advertising Awards, or the BRAs, as you may well remember, Tom. I don't know whether you were at the first one. I don't think you were. No. Obviously the first probably 15 years was all print ads, and it was just about being a bit quirky. If you look at the work that was winning then, it was just quirky ads. Perhaps had a shock factor. I'll recall now the first ad that won the first Rads or the BRAs was a campaign, a social work campaign for Cambridge County Council, and it was it was a DPS. It looks like a DPS. Probably appeared in Community Care, one of our publications. Had a one page of all the jobs. There was a full page listing of about 10 different jobs on there.
Yeah.
And then the other side was just one small image of a 10-year-old girl. Forget her name. Let's call her Jo. Jo now knows the difference between smack and smack.
Right.
And I imagine at that time that was probably quite groundbreaking, and it was probably and I don't think challenges in the social care industry, things that all these councils are still looking for these qualified social workers, and even then they're trying to make shock factor to try and get those social workers into their organisations because they're competing with others. But we did talk about trying to look at the opportunity of having the best of the best. So looking at all the winners of the previous 25 years that won Work of the Year, but it's just impossible. There's no way you can compare the likes of Barclays campaign that won in 2000 last year to some of these print campaigns, albeit these print campaigns are very, very good and creatively excellent. It's so different how organisations now are obviously communicating with potential candidates, and we change the categories every year. We get a focus group together, of which Mark was one, and we look at each category, and we speak to the agencies, and we actually get clients in as well to sort of say, look, is this aligned to your organisation, or is this aligned to the type of work that you're doing with organisations? And so the last kind of couple, we've seen candidate engagement. That actually was the Barclays winning piece in that category.
Yeah.
And new for this year is more candidate interaction. So more and more organisations are using things like gamification and competition to get candidates interacting with their organisations, so they get a good understanding about what that organisation's all about before they even think about applying for a job there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how do you see those categories being populated? What sort of things do you think the judges are going to be looking for?
We have a good mix of judges, which is always great for debate. Obviously, most of the judges are made up of people that have worked in the recruitment ad agency comms space, from creatives to client service to digital people, so a real mixture of people. And then obviously we have clients as well, because traditionally you'd always get this kind of agencies looking at the creative side and look at that piece of work, it's amazing, it's innovative, it's never been done before. And then you've got the client who's kind of sort of holding them back a little bit and saying, well, hang on a minute, let's have a look at how much money was spent on this, and actually did it deliver what it set out to, and what was the cost per hire, and all the ROI stuff that clients will perhaps bring agencies back to life a little bit. And although the RADs, they don't want to lose the creative, because the RADs were formed all around creative recruitment comms. However, it's had to evolve, because we know that what does creative mean? Is it a pretty picture? Is it a great way of engaging? Creative can mean not just the way it looks, but the way it interacts. So the judges, we'll have 18 very different people in a room, all looking for different things and all debating certain things. It's always an argument between cost against creativity, and that will no doubt carry on into this year.
And what wins normally?
Well, we do give weighting to certain categories. So we will look at a category and say, for this one, you might want to think more about the ROI than the creativity, because it's not a typical category that necessarily lends itself to creativity, more so than people interacting, let's say.
Yeah.
However, for innovation this year, we're going to say, let the creative reins off, and actually let's not worry too much about the cost or what the ROI was. If it's just a great piece of work and it's innovative, then it's a great piece of work and it's innovative, and it should be rewarded as such. And innovative doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that's never been done before. It could be a banner ad, it could be a print ad that is just done in a way that is quite quirky or perhaps hasn't been done before.
Okay, I completely applaud that. I think the idea of just being able to do the thing that is going to work best is going to have that take things forward is absolutely the the place where all of our energy gets put quite a lot of the time from a client perspective and from an agency perspective. And I think that it's a great thing to be recognising.
Good. I'm glad you agree.
So I guess one of the obvious follow-on question then is that, if you look at the way that candidate experience work is now being more visible, in terms of the way the RADs are working, is that where you see the main challenge for employers being over the next, I don't know, few years, maybe 4 or 5 years? Is it about making that better?
Yeah, I do. And, I think as we're coming out of a recession, it certainly feels like that. It feels, from what I'm reading, that more and more organisations are now back on the hunt for good talent. Everyone's going to be looking for this talent. It's going to become a job seekers market again. So job seekers will have a good choice of opportunities out there, and it is going to be the ones that stand out. It's going to be those organisations that are perhaps doing things differently around this interaction and this engagement piece. Even at RBI, we haven't quite got it right. We're getting there. We're certainly, getting better at it. And also the skill sets. I think organisations now, and if I just use RBI as an example, the type of people we want to bring in the business is so different now to what it was 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
The workforce around technology, engineering, web design, those types of people, we probably weren't looking for 10 years ago. But they're the talent we're now looking for. And I know that other organisations are going to be after these same people. So, how as an organisation are you going to stand out to your competitors to get these people in?
Yeah. Is there people who are doing that really well in your view, or is it still very developmental?
Well, I think if you look at, I think you just need to look at the previous RADs winners over the last sort of 2 years. And I think organisations could do a lot worse and speak to them. And I know these organisations, they're quite happy to talk about their successes. If you look at some of the stuff, the Barclays campaign I've already mentioned, that was groundbreaking. Actually, when that was judged for Work of the Year, what normally is a half-day session to try and sort of filter out which of those three, let's say, it was unanimous. Everyone said that has to win Work of the Year. If you look at things like EDF Energy, like Mars, like EE, like Accenture, some of the campaigns, Thales, that they've been involved in the last 2 years, and obviously just go to the website because you'll get an understanding about the piece of work, and you'll also get comment from the client and the agency about why that was successful. There's also interviews from the actual clients at the RADs winning their trophy. But I think organisations could do a lot worse and talk to successful businesses that are doing things well. I guess you could do a lot worse and speak to a good recruitment ad agency as well to get them to help you in some of the challenges that you're going to be facing.
Okay, we won't ask you to name names on that, Pete.
I wouldn't be able to do that. No,
of course not. I guess one of the things that if you start that process, it can feel quite daunting. So, if you take the approach that baby steps will get you to where you want to get to eventually, if you were looking at how an employer might begin that journey of building a great candidate experience, of building better candidate engagement, building that conversation, what would be the first thing that you would suggest people do apart from speaking to people who maybe have experience?
Good question. I mean, this is out of my safety net a little bit. Talking to successful companies, yes. Learning from what you've done well, yes. Changing the things that you haven't been successful with, do. I don't know. I think learning, speaking to people, the early steps. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. Obviously, a lot depends on the type of organisation you are. The type of skill set challenges that you're facing. It's a tricky one, Tom. I don't know what the right answer is.
Well, no, I think you've actually hit it on the head. I think it's the talking to people. I think that my view would be that if we want to talk to people about what they're interested in and show how we can be a good place for them to choose to have their career, then we need to understand what they're interested in first. and then start building out a message that's going to allow them to see where they might fit in and where they might get value from the organisation going forward. So, actually, I think you're exactly right. So do the research, know your market, look at data, start by beginning a conversation around, what is it that you want as somebody who could come and work here, and then start thinking about how you as an employer or how you as an organisation start selling that to them. I think that the days of guesswork and supposition have gone away. I think we now work in a data-rich environment that gives us the information we want, but critically, that emotional connection only comes through having a clear understanding about what people are interested in.
Sure, yeah, and I think your own workforce is your strength, and utilize your own workforce. So speak to your own workforce. Retention is going to be key here. It's going to become a job-seeking market. You have to keep your current workforce happy. So engage in them in the first instance. Get them to be the ambassadors of your organisation.
Cool. So, obviously the Rad Awards is going to take up a good amount of your time going forward, I guess. But what do you think? What are your priorities personally and professionally for maybe the next 12 months?
Professionally, the Rad Awards 25 years. Very excited about it. I've now been sort of running and organising for the sales and sponsorship of the Rads for the last 5 years, and that is something that motivates me. Going back to one of your earlier questions, obviously, I want to improve the Rads every year. That's and every year people come up to me and say, Pete, what a great event, fantastic, So I always am looking for that next, how can I improve it even more? The 25 years gives me an opportunity. Obviously, a lot comes down to sponsorship. We're currently looking for sponsors. If anyone's interested, please give me a call. But I'm working quite closely with New Scientist at the moment. And New Scientist is going through an exciting time. Traditionally, New Scientist was the place for people that work in science, R&D and whatnot, that would go for a job. Now, what we've never been able to do in New Scientist is understand the .com audience, which is more the consumer audience, the Tom Chestertons and the Pete Clarkes of the world that might pick up New Scientist or read an article on the website that isn't necessarily in science, but yet we've got a huge audience there of talent, of probably the type of talent that organizations are currently looking for. If you look at technology and engineering and areas like that, it's very diverse. I think 48% of our readers are female. We know there's many organizations out there that have big D&I issues and, are looking at new ways to bring in, people from other areas. So we're doing a big piece of research with the .com audience to understand who they are, what they do, and with the aim to actually look at the job site, redevelop the job site that accommodates not just the traditional science roles that we've always carried, but also some of these other areas. But there's a lot of work to do. There's a massive piece of research, and there's the job site development. So that's something that's going to be taking a lot of my time, certainly over the next 6 to 12 months. Wow,
big jobs. So if we, there's a couple of things I think I'd really like to put into the show notes for this, which is I'd love to show people the Cambridge Council ad.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you can share that with us or whether we can pick that up from one of the sites that you mentioned, but certainly we'll put a link into the Rad Awards. I guess the deadline must be coming up quite soon for
the entries.
Yeah.
Well, we launched last week, so no, we've got a bit of time for entries, and I shouldn't say this, but we normally give a few days extension because the agencies tend to leave it to lastminute.com.
Really?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The passion for this year is when you walk into the Rads, we're going to be able to display all the winning pieces of work over the last 25 years. If I can use this opportunity as a bit of a plug to say, believe it or not, we haven't actually got all the winning pieces of work over the last 25 years. The early years seem to be the challenge. So if anyone's listening to this, we're looking for the creative pieces of work that were in 1990, 91, 92, 93, 94. We've kind of got pictures. We know we need high-res images. So that's going to be a challenge. And of course, whatever I get, I'll share with you, Tom, that you can go. And some of them are, some of the print ads that won over the last sort of 25 years have been, breakthrough, and a lot of people talk about certain ones.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see those again. It's good to walk down memory lane every so often, right? So
yeah,
good to go back. I remember
Absolutely.
very clearly the piece of work that won the year that I judged, and I still hold that up as one of the best pieces of work I've ever seen. So, but I'm not going to mention who that was.
Okay.
You can leave that on there. It's the 2004-5 winner anyway.
Okay. I'm sure that they'll be able to get that from the Rad's website.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So we're going to put all your contact details into the show notes, let's say. Is there anything else that you think you'd like to leave in terms of parting words of inspiration? Tell people how they can get hold of you, and then we'll.
Yeah. I've mentioned it already, but as we are now moving into a more exciting time, things are looking up. I would suggest that you question what you do and why you do it, and embrace change. That would be the one thing that I would, certainly, that's something that I totally believe in. I question what you do and why you're doing it, and if it makes sense that you're doing it, carry on doing it. But if it doesn't, embrace change and go for it.
Fabulous. Peter Clarke, thank you very much. Really enjoyed speaking with you today. Next edition of TonicWith will be out next week, so hopefully you'll be able to tune into that. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Tom.